important, and it's important to remain engaged in this entire process to really know who we are going to start working with and to make sure that we have accountability more than we have in the past moving forward. So some of the few norms that we have are make sure you offer your presence, one mic, so each candidate will have an opportunity to answer questions, and we ask that one person be speaking at a time. We also ask people who are not candidates to not unmute while candidates are answering questions. We will have time at the end for everyone to be able to speak. So we're also here just to really listen, not just to respond. We also want everyone to be concise with what they're saying, so please land the plane. We also believe in stepping up and stepping back, so really knowing when is it time to allow others opportunity to take up space. We also would appreciate if everyone would speak from their I perspective, right? And everything that is shared here stays here, what's learned here leaves here. Another really big important one is disagreement does not equal disrespect. I know we all have very different opinions, ideas, knowledge, wisdom that we want to share in making CPS way better for all of our children. And we might have some disagreements about how to move that forward, but that does not mean that we have to stay here and disrespect each other. But really listening how, we're really setting the stage for how we're going to work together in the future. And we would also everyone to be self-aware, right? On the impacts of your words, right? It may not be your intention to have what you're saying come off a certain way, but it's still important to own the impact of that. So right before we get into the candidate forum, we do have 3 speakers who will be kind of sharing a little bit of their perspective as parent and student organizers. Many of them were very involved with fighting for an elected school board, very involved with Cops Out of CPS, and a few other organizing campaigns within the student and parent movement. We have Natasha Dunn, we have Rod Wilson, and we have Caitlin Salado, who will be speaking for a few minutes just about their experiences. And Natasha will share just 1 or 2 sentences about each person.
Thanks, Zaccor. This is Natasha. we oftentimes do that. All right, so really quickly, just wanted to, by way of a brief introduction, thought it was really important to ground us in the space, to have our speakers join us. Rod Wilson will start us off. Rod comes to us with years of experience, decades actually, of experience in organizing, and is really a key comrade in this work that brought us to an elected school board. So we won't interrupt after Rod concludes his comments. Natasha Dunn, who is a powerful parent organizer, former union organizer, CPS mom, all around baddie in terms of education, justice, and the plight for equity in Chicago public schools. I'm looking forward to hearing Natasha's voice. And then Caitlin, who is a rising senior and is going to join us to share her thoughts and her experience from a CPS student perspective. So super excited to have y'all on to start us off with this plenary. So without further ado, Rod, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. First thing I want to acknowledge is that we have to recognize that this is an historic event. Chicago is nearly 200 years old and never had an elected school board. Never. When we were fighting for this, we were looking at all the school districts throughout Illinois, all 791 of them, all of them had elected school boards. They may have a district with 1 school in it and they had elected school board, but Chicago didn't. And so what we're doing is this first time in history that we're going to elect people onto the school board. So this is a big win for us. And it gives us voice for how we want to see schools, the future of our schools to be. Now, I'm the executive director of Eugenia Burns Hope Center. But before I came to the Hope Center, I was an organizer at COCO, Kenwood Open Community Organization, for 12 years. And that's where I got involved with the fight for elected school boards. My brother Jitu Brown is the one who actually worked with me in getting into this fight. at Cocoa in Bronzeville, we were at ground zero for school closings and throughout the whole city. We were the first ones to get hit by school closings. There was a plan to close 21 out of 23 schools in Bronzeville at one point, called the Mid-South Plan, before Renaissance 2010. And so we noticed we had to go down to the school board, spend the night there, disrupt the school board, tell the school, board, hey, you're using the wrong data to close this school, using the school, like there was a school called Douglas. They used a school from a high school, Douglas Elementary School on the south side. They used a school from Douglas on the west side. Their data to close the school. We pointed out they still closed the school. We tell them you can't close this school and send these children to this location because they don't get along, and it's going to be all this violence. Still close the school. And so we recognize all these unanimous decisions to close schools, that the problem was the school board. So in the mid-2000s, we began talking to folks around the city about this, and folks didn't think it was possible. Around after the school closing started to go throughout the city more, and people began more affected by it, around 2010, we started pulling a coalition together called CODE, Communities Organized for Democracy and Education. And in 2011, we started pulling together. And in 2012, we coordinated our first citywide referendum for an elected school board. And that brings us to where we're here today. Now, I do want to make sure that we understand that having an elected school board is not a panacea. It's not going to cure all our problems. It is not that. But it does give us power, so that if we have someone representing us on that board and they're not doing what we need them to do, we can vote them out. But it all falls back on us. So I don't want people to think this is just going to be a walk in the park. We got to elect school board. Yay. No, it's still work we got to do to make sure we are putting people on the board that actually represent what we believe in. Not that got a good stomp speech, or they got somebody that can write a speech for them, or they sound good. No, they represent, from what they've done, what we believe in, so that we can make sure that they're voting and they're making decisions on the best interests of our children. So I know they only gave me a couple of minutes, so I can't go too far. So, but I want to thank you all. It's exciting times, and in 2 years we get to vote the whole school board in. So it's gonna be even more crazy then, but it's one of them good problems, good things. So I'm glad to be here.
Should I jump right in?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me to come. I do think these are exciting times, but these are also times of great concern, specifically for communities that Rod just explained, communities that has been historically disenfranchised. Yes, this is an elected school board. We'll have representation based on who we vote for to a certain extent. Half the board will be voted in and half will be still appointed. But even with that, it's concern, because we, in particular in the Black community, and this is where I come in and this is my passion work, our students have been struggling for a long time within the system. We have the system has pretty much purged our schools of Black students and Black teachers for a period of 20 years. And our numbers, our population within the school district specifically outlines that purge. So I, in 2019, formed a group called the Black Community Collaborative to really address these issues within CPS. I brought together a grassroots group of activists and neighborhood experts to create a Black position around education. We believe that the harm that was done to Black children and community as a whole, from the school closures, turnarounds, and mergers, have widened the academic gap that we see. Strikes, school closures, and everything else creates a chain reaction that have ultimately led to pushing Black students and teachers out, because no one has ever really spent the time to really address the root cause of the problem, specifically from a cultural perspective. We know that there's an intersection between education and economics, and Black Chicago has the highest unemployment rate and poverty rate. So we began to look at CPS data, research from UIC and U of C, and other credible sources to inform and engage our community through our work through the collaborative. At the time, in 2019, when we founded, only 10%, between 10 and 13% of Black eighth grade read and do math proficiently. That means that 90% of our children were being set up to fail in high school and beyond. So when we look at our community from a total perspective, we don't just use data and look at it as numbers. We look at these as people. We see the impact of the miseducation system in our communities every day. We see the impact of the miseducation system when we see our children who are committing crimes in our community. We see the impact of the miseducation system when we see the bloodshed on our streets of Black babies every single day. And so we saw this crisis, and we believe that this crisis required an immediate attention and correction. So in 2020, before the pandemic, immediately just before the pandemic, actually it was around the pandemic, we started to demand that Chicago Public Schools address the education crisis, that they created and implemented a plan in concert with the community. For a year, myself, Tanisha Peoples, who's also an education activist, Brian Mullins, Dion, Patrick Brutus, and a couple of other of us worked with Dr. Jackson and Dr. Sweeney to push for an initiative to address these issues. We also brought in experts like Dr. Stovall, NAACP Westside, and other grassroots groups to help lay this foundation to create a Black student success plan. Unfortunately, in 2021, after the transition in leadership, the work we did came to a complete halt. I spent over a year attending board meetings and communicating with CPS leadership to really pick up the work again, because we knew that the pandemic would and did actually desecrate our community. So before the pandemic, our students were already struggling. The pandemic only widened that gap. And so it became with silence on their end. They were not really trying to budge for a while. So I decided to work in concert with some of our West Side activists and formed an alliance with Valerie Leonard and Dwayne Truss and some of the other people who are part of our AFA group. And we started to push for a statewide initiative to address this crisis because we realized that if CPS was not going to do it on their own accord, we needed to create a law. And so what we did was we pushed for a statewide effort to codify into law a standing committee within the Board of Education for Black student achievement. We were successful in that with the help of other grassroots organizations. Raise Your Hand was one organization that supported us. We had multiple groups within the Black community, some of the most grassroots groups from garden clubs all the way to neighborhood block clubs, pushing on their state representatives to form this, to have this committee be a law, because there's a misperception in the city of Chicago and really across the world that Black people do not care about education or their communities, but they do. With that being said, and I'm going to wrap it up really quick, currently the board is not abiding by the law. And it's very important that this committee, which is supposed to be up right now, and it is a committee that is going to be governed by the Board of Education to monitor and measure the overall improvement of Black student outcomes, is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. So because it's not, we will be planning a series of public hearings in August. And we are in the process of finalizing some of the dates and venues that we intend to do weekly people hearings about this important issue that's impacting our children, because we cannot go any further without there being this process in place to ensure that our kids are receiving the quality education they deserve, because this impacts everyone at the end of the day. And so I'm hoping that the people who are running for like the school board will spend time attending these hearings, reaching out to us, having conversations, because it's going to be important that they understand this law and be a part of implementing it and making sure it works correctly. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Salado. I am a rising senior in Chicago Public Schools on the South Side. I go to Julian High School. I'm also a community organizer and a student organizer as well. I've worked on different initiatives like Cops Out of CPS. I've worked with students across the city on expectations for education, and what education looks like across the city, not just in our Whitney Youngs and our Kenwoods, and our Lynn Blooms, and our schools that get more resources than others. I would talk about my line of work, but I think that I specifically want to just touch on what our communities have lacked when it comes to elected officials and when it comes to people who are in positions of power. Um, I think that there's been this huge disconnect, and I think Natasha spoke on it very well, but there's been this huge disconnect as far as the expectations in classrooms and what classrooms actually look like. Like I said, I go to school on the South Side of Chicago in a regular neighborhood high school. And just in this past year, we had 3 teachers out for math. So none of the juniors had math teachers this year until January, and we only had one. We had 2 English teachers who were out, and a principal who putting his hands in so many different buckets and trying to figure out things to do. And like I said, I'm a community organizer and have had connections with older people, people from Chicago Teachers Union, the mayor's office, the Board of Education. And I speak on these issues very often, and never have any of these elected officials ever reached out to me personally, or after being elected, have they held conversations with me knowing that these are issues in my school community. I exist in a school community where today I just found out that a classmate who I looked to as a brother was shot and killed just last night, where another classmate was just put in jail. And so that is the reality of Chicago public schools, not just when district folks want to pop in and look at things when everything is nice and dandy. And not only are there vacancies in schools, but there's a vacancy in the culture of us nurturing and providing for young people. I think that's what brings me here. I think that's what drives so many people to do the work. Because as parents, as teachers, as community leaders and organizers, as a student, seeing it and being aware of the conditions of our schools and knowing that we lack so much power and we lack so much ability to change when we have the ideas, when we have the people, when we know what's going on and what's wrong. It's really frustrating. And so I think that one of my main concerns and one of the main things that regardless what side of the city you're on, what one of the 77 neighborhoods that you're in, is that when you are elected into a position, you then serve the people who you're representing. And I think that way too many times do people get in office and they completely disconnect from the people who they serve. And that's the sad part. And that's what leads to so many different gaps and loopholes. And that's all that I have to say.
Powerful. Thank you. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for being here despite what you're going through and really wanting your voice to be heard this evening. Again, thank you, Rod and Natasha, for offering a grounding for us. And so I appreciate everyone who is feeling or sending vibrations in the chat. So to keep us going, now let's get into the good part and why I believe you are all here this evening. So again, just want to acknowledge once again, thank you so much for your patience. Without delaying us any further, let's get into the meet the candidate portion of our agenda. I'll pass it over to Erica.
Okay, now that we're kind of in the juicy part of our forum, I'll go over a few logistics of how this will run. So we had folks submit questions that they wanted us to ask the candidates. We picked 5 questions that we saw a common theme around, or we saw occur multiple times. And from those 5 questions, our team will take turns asking a question. We'll start with the first 5 candidates, and after every 5th candidate, we're going to cycle out a question. Because we do have 15 plus candidates today, we want to make sure everyone is able to answer at least 2 questions tonight. So because of that, every candidate will have about 30 seconds to a minute to answer the question. If there is a question that you didn't get a chance to answer, you could definitely respond to it in the chat. You're more than welcome to engage in the chat as well with different people. All that we ask is that you remain respectful while engaging in the chat or with any of the candidates and with each other in general. So with that, and we'll definitely host more opportunities for people to engage with candidates in the coming weeks. So this is not the only chance that you will be able to hear candidates answer questions or kind of engage with them in different ways. And then the way that we will call each candidate is we'll go by your district number. So we'll start with the first district, and I will call each candidate based on their ballot position. So each candidate, first candidate will answer. They have 30 seconds to a minute to answer. Then I'll call the next candidate to answer. And again, every 5th candidate will cycle out to a new question. Does that make sense for everyone?
I just want to verify, just in order of, will the candidates do their introductions? We'll go through and do their introductions, and then we'll follow with questions.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we can have each candidate go ahead and introduce themselves.
Should we start with District 5? I'm just kidding.
So we're actually going to start with District 1. Erica's going to call you all's names first, but to go ahead and get started, District 1 is going to be Jennifer Custer. Jennifer, you are up and have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Hi, my name is Jennifer Custer. I just want to start first by saying thank you to Natasha and everybody here for inviting me and hosting this event. And thank you to everybody who is watching and participating. This is an incredibly important election that's coming up, as many of you have already heard some of the other people say. With that being said, I am a 14-year educator. I have spent and devoted my entire working career to education. I started in Wisconsin and worked there for 3 years and during the Scott Walker era. And then I moved down here to Illinois about 12 years ago. I have served in various positions in education, and all of those have afforded me many different learning opportunities as I've gone through them. I started here as a para. I was a long-term sub for a while. I was a teacher in a classroom, 7th grade language arts for about 6 years. And then during my time as well, I was also a union president for our local union, led our union through negotiations, and really had just a great experience in that role and learned so many different things, worked very closely with our school board in that process. And then I went on to get my master's degree and was a school administrator for 4 years as well out in Addison. So again, served in many different roles within a school and learned many different things from all of those experiences. But my current role right now, and the role that was sort of the best fit for our family within the last year, is a mother, and I have 2 wonderful boys, one of which goes to our local school down the street, Josephine Locke, and he's actually in pre-K. And we'll be going there full time next year. So we're very excited about that. And I am running because I want him, his classmates, kids like him, all kids, to have a great education. And I have seen throughout my years, kids struggle at school, kids not like school, kids come in with the idea that they are less than, that they are not worthy. And one of the big things that I want to be able to do as a school board member is to give every student an opportunity to come in and enjoy something about their day. School should be a great place for kids to be, a safe place, a place where kids feel welcomed. And that is something that I want for all kids, including mine. So it's a little bit about me running in District 1. Thank you.
Okay, up next is Michelle Pierre.
So good evening, everyone, and I'll say thank you again to this wonderful organization for having us this evening. So I'm going to start off with 2 words, barrier breaker. And I remember in high school, a teacher telling me that I wasn't able to go to high school. And I said, to go to college. And I said, I can do this. I can go to college. I will be successful. And I fought really hard to make sure that happened. And I broke that barrier. Now, 4 degrees later, I have my doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania, but someone didn't believe in me and I had to break that barrier. Fast forward, I was a teacher in the South Bronx and they gave me this class and they said, this is the worst class. And I didn't believe in that. And I said, I'm going to break this barrier. 90% of my students achieved the highest marks on their student achievement exam. And we were reading Romeo and Juliet in the 5th grade in the South Bronx, because I broke that barrier. Fast forward, I was the youngest principal in DC and they gave me one of the lowest performing schools and said, this school is going to close. And I broke that barrier. I started a one-way immersion program for a school that served 97% African-American students and said, our kids deserve this type of education. And now that school has a wait list of children trying to get in. Fast forward to being the chief academic officer and being in a district that they didn't believe that we can close the achievement gap for Black and Brown students for graduating in 4 to 5 years. And we did that because I broke barriers. I broke barriers again when I came to Chicago to be the chief schools officer, where they said the South and West Side couldn't have high performing students and getting into the best high schools. And we did that. 100% of my schools were commendable on the state assessment. I'm running because I believe that Chicago could be the best district in the country and be an example for the world. And I want to break that barrier. But the biggest reason why I'm running is my daughter, Simone. She is a rambunctious child in junior high school. But every single day I hear her talk about not having a teacher in the classroom. And I sit on her board fighting to figure out, like, how can we be innovative and get teachers in computer science to be at her high school. I fight when I was on her LSC to figure out how do we get the best principal to be at her school, because I want her to have a great education. And I know when I think about Simone having a great education, I can impact so many other students because I want them to have that same impact. And the way to do that is 3 things. 1 is to make sure that we have budget transparency. 2, that we have great school options in every single neighborhood. And 3, we have a collaborative process to make sure that our families and communities can speak to what they need at their school level. And that is why I am running for District 1, because I want to break barriers and make sure that every child, not only in District 1, but across Chicago, can and will be successful. So thank you again for having me. And please make sure to think about all candidates across the district.
Thank you, Michelle. So next we have District 2, Ebony DeBerry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having this forum. I see a lot of familiar faces on here, so that makes me feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. I'm Ebony DeBerry. I am a community organizer. I've been at One North Side for 10 years. I've worked on gaining progressive revenue for years to provide more for Chicago Public Schools. We've won some of those campaigns, but it's not enough. You know, I had the pleasure of being a student in Chicago Public Schools, and I know how valuable that experience can be. I walked to my schools and was prepared for college. And so I want that for every generation. We should not be weakening our system. We should be getting stronger and stronger. I want to really work with community. I was raised by my community, and also my child was raised in the community. That means that we were never alone. We were supported, you know. I'm accountable to others. They know me. And so when whether we're winning or we're losing, we're together in it. And so I want to be someone who is working in collaboration with community. I want to be accountable to my community. I think that we've been lacking this for so very long. I didn't even know who our elected school officials were. And when I did try to work on a campaign to recover a bus stop when my son was at Disney school, they were so inaccessible. It was like trying to meet with the president. You know, they didn't answer their phones. They wouldn't return emails. I think we deserve better. I see a lot of schools performing well here on the North Side with different cultures and different needs. And I think that there's ways to leverage what we already know about good schools on behalf of schools that are not doing well. I think there's a lot of opportunity. That excites me. I think that our students have all they need to be successful, and that we just need to provide the services and the supports that all the students need. They need mentoring, they need counseling, they need nurses and librarians and arts and music. I receive those things. And so I'm so interested in making sure that those things are maintained or brought back, because testing can't be our only way to value our young people. We need to diversify. We need to recognize that they are full of gifts and talents. We need to make sure that there are plenty of good schools in our city. And I am in relationship with so many teachers, parents, and community members right now that will set the priorities for our elected school board if I am elected. Thank you. Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you, Ebony. Next, we'll have Danielle Kleinman.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to raise your hand. I've known you guys for a decade now, and you guys just keep growing and making important changes. It's amazing. As you can see, I'm in a tow truck. My car broke down in Eisenhower 290. So I'm actually going to have to sign off right after this because my phone's going to die and I need to be able to call a lift. I'm running because when I was first elected to local school council at Nicholas Senn High School, the neighborhood high school in my neighborhood, Rahm Emanuel closed 50 schools. And from then on, it was obvious the impact of divestment in already disinvested neighborhoods. I mean, only 2 schools were closed in white neighborhoods out of 50. You know, and it's just unheard of. Later on, I was elected then into Walt Disney Magnet Elementary School, which is a citywide magnet school, very unique. And I was then able to learn further what I learned from the Nicholas Senn High School, how a budget and how a school and how interfaces with the city at large. We had problems that Senn didn't have, like buses. And the board now needs the leadership to take what a vision I have to the next level, which is that a graduate of CPS should have a golden ticket in their diploma to whatever life leads them to next, be it a 4-year college, a 2-year associate's, a job in the building union trades, right into the workforce. If a student makes it through CPS and gets a diploma, then CPS owes to that student that they have earned the best education and best resources possible. It's terrific to see Rod Wilson here. Again, I've known him for decades. And that's when I got started in education. It was actually with Rod. We were lobbying funding for a program called Grow Your Own Teachers. And it is an amazing program that provides scholarships for people who are already workers in neighborhoods to return and get an education certificate and degree and bring their skills to the neighborhood schools. It's things like that. It's that leadership that I believe the CPS board needs more than policy experts, because policy experts need to be running the policy departments, whereas, as we've heard from others already presented, they're true leaders. And we need true leaders to be front and center of the school board that will promote accountability, promote transparency, and ultimately lead to the legitimate outcome of CPS becoming a world-class school system. Thank you so much. I'm going to put my website and email in the chat. I really appreciate you guys. I'm sorry for being so flustered and rushed, but I really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you to Danielle. Next, we have up Maggie Cullerton Hooper.
Hello, all. You might hear some screaming in the background, so I apologize in advance if that is the case. Okay. Hi, I'm Maggie Cullerton Hooper. I am a single mom to 2 kids who attend our neighborhood school in Albany Park, Hibbard Elementary. I am a parent with disabilities to a child with disabilities. And I believe it is really critical that we have disability advocates who are both people with disabilities ourselves and SPED parents serving on the Board of Education. I'm a very active member of Raise Your Hand and have done quite a lot of the parent organizer training programs and spent the last decade fighting alongside CPS parents and students and teachers. Beyond education, advocacy, and organizing, I'm a survivor of gender-based violence, so I've been a peer activist for survivors for a number of years. I'm on the board of Planned Parenthood. I'm a proud advocate for reproductive justice and particularly impactful for gender-affirming care for all ages. I'm deeply engaged in racial justice and equity organizing, and I've served on my Hibbard's LSC for almost 8 years now. So I started as a community member, moved obviously to become a parent member, and now I serve as the chair of our LSC. I've spent my professional career in Chicago's Health and Human Services nonprofit space until 2018 when I decided to move into public service at the city of Chicago. I was a deputy commissioner at DCASE, the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. So I led all of our cultural and art grant making out to the city to individual artists and arts organizations. And then I became the chief philanthropy and partnerships officer. So I led teams across every mayoral initiative and city department. I've managed multi-million-dollar municipal budgets. Had to really stretch and maximize impact of public funds and build sustainable partnerships between lots of different entities in order to make those things work. I understand how government functions and where we can create lasting change. Right now, I work continuing the fight for racial equity with the Alliance for Black Equality, which was founded by Dr. Alvin Tillery. She's also the founding director of the Center for the Study of Diversity and Democracy at Northwestern. I'm running for this seat because I'm aware that my child can't succeed if every child can't succeed. I'm running because, again, we need a leader who is a person with disabilities, that has a child with disabilities, and that has a proven track record of fighting for all of the kids. I'm running because many, many people have invested in me and trusted me to show up for them and for their kids. They've taken the time to teach me. They've given me the grace and the space to be a better person. And I think that it's largely due to them that I have the humility to be a productive member of a multiracial democratic space. But honestly, I mean, parents of CPS have been conditioned to settle for less for decades. My daughter finished first grade having 6 first grade teachers. So she can't read. And I'm on the LSC. I'm a part of these conversations. It's not the school's fault. It's being underfunded and understaffed in an under-resourced, under-prioritized community school. I think that we can do a lot more than we are currently doing. I think that we can reform special education funding. We can overcome budget deficits. We can ensure our children are learning in clean schools. We can prioritize Black student success and parent voice and demand full transparency. We can create an entire district where every child gets to walk to an excellent neighborhood school. I'm running because I believe that public education is the backbone of our society, that the investments that we make in our schools reflect our values as individuals and as a society. And I think it is long past time to give every single child the education they deserve. I think I will bring the insight and the experience and the dedication and values that will deliver for our future.
Thank you, Maggie.
Okay, and we're gonna go on to District 3, which is Jason Dunn.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Dones. I'd like to start by saying I'm running in the district that I grew up in the school system that I grew up in. So I was a student in CPS K-12. When I was young, I actually switched schools because my single mother was told that she was literally told the words, "This school cannot provide enough for Jason," by a teacher. So I went from a neighborhood school with limited resources to a CPS magnet school with a state-of-the-art computer lab. More on that in a second, why that motivated me to run. But I'm also a former West and South Side teacher who never took a day off and probably needed it, if I'm honest. But I taught alongside some of the most amazing educators that you could imagine. I didn't take much time off because my energy was the only thing that felt most abundant. It was the resource that I could control. I've been in education for 14 years, and because my day job isn't enough, I also am a 3-term LSC member at Moose Elementary, where my son now goes to school. So I understand the village it takes to build and sustain a strong neighborhood school. So I'm a CPS student, I'm a teacher, I'm an LSC member, I'm a Humboldt Park kid, now a neighborhood school parent. Prioritizing the health of our schools is what I chose to commit a lifetime to. It's all I really have known in a career. It's all I intend to know. And I do believe that everything I've lived and committed my time to has led me to this moment. And so I plan to be a strong advocate, the advocate that the speakers at the top of this time together described. I plan to be an advocate for the students and families in my home district and the city at large. But I mentioned my mom and the story of switching schools because I'm ultimately here for my son, and because I'm having the same conversation in my head that my mom had 30 years ago. And that's ultimately a problem. Trying to balance how to be an advocate for public institutions and a champion for neighborhood schools while also getting access to the best possible education that you can for your child. If I'm honest, I feel that tension daily. And I'm running because all families in Chicago deserve to have quality schools within walking distance of their home. And I plan to be accountable to those families. Thank you.
You too. Next, we're starting with District 4 with Karin Zaccor. Also, if I'm mispronouncing your name, I am very sorry. Please correct me.
You did fine, thanks. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Raise Your Hand, for having this forum, for giving me the opportunity to talk about why I'm running and why people should vote for me. I actually want to start out by shouting out Rod and Natasha and Catlyn for making clear how important it is for all of us to listen to parents and students. constantly, and also the importance of electing candidates that are walking the walk. That's what we fought for, right? As we work for the elected school board. So we really have to bring it to life. When I was a CPS parent, I saw disparities between the under-resourced neighborhood school my daughter attended and the nearby magnet school, and those disparities still exist across the city today. As a CPS teacher, the board decided to close our school in 2005 as part of Renaissance 2010 privatization. And so two colleagues and I wrote the proposal for Uplift Community High School so we would not lose our neighborhood school to a charter. As a community member, I spoke at hearings that the board held for the two schools in my community that were slated to close, just like so many of you had to attend hearings in your communities in 2013. The board didn't even bother to show up. So along with many of you here, I fought for over a decade for the elected school board because these situations are just unacceptable. Our vision was to elect members that would be rooted in and committed to their communities, and would be accessible to families. And so I'm running to realize that vision. For 46 years, dating myself a little here, I have been working for equity and justice in education and in our communities. I've been active in fighting not only for quality education, but low-income housing, decent healthcare, and safe communities, because all these things are connected. I've been a parent advocate, an LSC member, and a lead activist, including spearheading the campaign to get lead removed from Stockton School. I also taught in CPS for the last 28 years at various grade levels from elementary through high school. So I'm very familiar with the current issues facing Chicago schools, such as how are we best going to help migrant students? What should we do to address mental health issues? How can we address technology problems in the classroom? And so many more. And I feel that I'm therefore the best prepared to deal with the issues of today's schools. As a board member, I'm committed to working for equitable school funding and a holistic vision of education embodied in sustainable community schools. Throughout my career, I've worked to ensure that the voices of parents and students are always heard, and I believe that's our obligation as the first elected school board. Thanks so much for listening, and if you live in District 4, please reach out.
Thank you, Karen. Next, we have up Kimberly Brown.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I've got my little timer going also. Thank you all. And I put my information in the chat if you want to browse on the side. My name is Kimberly Brown. I'm running in District 4. And what I'm looking forward to bringing is a combination of empathy and experience. And I'm going to break that down for you. As an independent candidate who is not coming at this from someone who's ingrained in any of the powers that be within CPS or Chicago politics. I am an organizational leader that's run organizations around Chicago as a C-suite executive, but also as a board member. So I understand how to lead teams and drive cultural change in a positive way, but also have that proven success in working in incredibly large organizations. And I like to say CPS is a $9 billion organization with hundreds of thousands of lives, over 600 schools. And this is a really big deal. And I'm not minimizing any of this, but a board of directors is the largest job possible. And bringing the experience of the proven ability to manage, at sometimes when I was a leader at GE, budgets that were billions of dollars is really critical, being able to negotiate with some very large corporations that do not have Chicago kids at their best interest. But being able to have that experience of being culturally driven to drive positive outcomes, regardless of what those are, is really important. We love activism at the community level, and I have done that every day when I walk my kids to school as a working parent. I have felt the pain of not being able to afford aftercare, which is more expensive than some of the most bougie gym memberships for the 2 hours of aftercare. I am an educator, so I also work at night teaching, and I've taught the CPS kids when they came out of CPS after COVID, their freshman year at Roosevelt University. And I don't do that because I love working extra. It's because I deeply believe in education. As the daughter of a physical therapy assistant who went back to school to be a public school teacher, my aunt was a speech pathologist who worked all over Chicagoland. My husband and my father are both combat veterans who dedicate their lives to service. And so education and teaching others is just part of what I do. And being able to balance the empathy and experience of organizational leadership, classroom education, and understanding what it takes to teach young people, having young elementary school kids in our local school, understanding the challenge of being a working parent, with my husband traveling sometimes where they're not around, building the community, and the struggle of making it all work. The Board of Education needs to manage a C-suite of executives, a really large organizational structure that's built on a culture that was not designed to function for our young people. We've got to remember it goes back to the first daily. And we need to make the pie bigger and solve it. So we need innovative solutions, a culture change that's going to take over a decade. We need to bring each other together, and that takes a board of unity and constructive problem solving, experience sitting and listening to and dealing with very large contracts. We've all seen what happened to some of our Chicago contracts. That drives the day-to-day. And when we talk to community leaders and our parents, they love their schools. They love their teachers. They want to see the board and the accountability at the corporate level. And so what I can bring is the experience and the empathy as an organizational leader, an educator that practices every day, and a CPS parent of young kids in elementary school representing the future of CPS for the next 12 years. On top of that, the three things that I think are critical in the next year and a half, because we've really got a year and a half for this, is access. We need to get busing back. We need to get kids into school, and we need to help the parents, primarily women who are affected. We need to figure out how to make the pie bigger, budget transparency, and figuring out that resources is not an issue, and I see the timer. And then finally, special education. Not only is it the law, it's the right thing to do, and we are losing our bright spots because people that can move are moving, and that is our gems of students that we need to keep in our school system and support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Thomas Day.
Thank you so very much for the opportunity to be with you. I'm so thankful to hear the voices on this call. I suspect that we'll have some disagreements, but I understand this organization to speak for a lot of Black and brown families in Chicago. And I want you to know that I will always listen to your views. I gain a great deal from your views. Not everybody in the 4th District race is on this call, but I am, because I think it's important to listen to the very strong views, including of that extraordinary rising senior we heard from earlier, about what you think we should be doing to move CPS forward. I'm Thomas Day. I'm a Lincoln Park resident. I have a 5-year-old who's going to go to Hawthorne next year, and I'm an Iraq War veteran. I served in the Army Center for Airborne Division for 5 years. I sub every once in a while at Tubman Elementary, and I'm a lecturer at the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago. So spending on Chicago public schools has nearly doubled the last 10 years, while student enrollment has decreased by about 80,000 students during that same time period. Property taxes to fund CPS schools are maxed out, and the results of all of this spending, students are a year behind pre-COVID test scores, chronic absenteeism, 40%. And the average age of a Chicago public school is nearly 85 years old. We are now facing $3 billion in urgent capital repairs and a nearly $400 million structural deficit. So we're going to have to make some tough choices around. We're going to need to do an audit of CPS, but we need to do much more. We need to ask lawmakers in Springfield to revisit pension reform that we have been ignoring for too long. And yes, I believe that we need to build new schools that consolidate disenrolled schools. But first, we need to establish what progressive looks like when it comes to our public schools. Schools in the Deep South, before the Brown versus Board of Education decision, were separate but equal, or so we were told. Then Thurgood Marshall went to the Supreme Court and demanded that our public schools be integrated because he knew separate but equal is never actually equal. It's always unequal. So my fellow progressives, and I am one of you, believe it or not, I volunteered and organized for Elizabeth Warren 4 years ago. Don't champion separate but equal. Champion new, fully populated, integrated schools. We cannot continue to have schools that date back to Wrigley Field, right? We cannot have schools that are 90% one race and giving them points for that. We are the most diverse city, or one of the most diverse cities in America, and we should facilitate that kind of integration in our schools. And to get there, we're going to have some tough conversations. And I'm here to have them. And I will always respond to your questions and engage with your views. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me at thomasday.org. I'm happy to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Andy Davis.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you, raise your hand, for holding this forum. It's very important stuff we're talking about. And thank you especially to Rod, Natasha, and Catlyn for the context that you brought to this discussion this evening. My name is Andy Davis. I'm running in District 4. My son is a CPS student at Lincoln Park High School. Chicago faces an existential challenge today. Violent crime is in our face. This past July 4th weekend, the news reported 21 killed and 86 wounded. Catlyn, your first up experience with that is a tragic reminder of the reality that the city faces every day. The other challenge, though, is closely connected and just as perilous in the long run: education, or the lack of it, in our current school system. CPS reported in June that citywide 1 in 3 third graders was reading at grade level. This was up from the pandemic, but make no mistake, it's a horrible result that we must not be satisfied with. I don't know the short-term answer to our violent crime problem.
Andy, your audio sounds very staticky.
I'll try getting closer and talking slower.
There it goes.
I do know that the short, pardon?
There it goes. I think it's kind of coming in and out.
Sorry about that. I don't know the short-term answer to our violent crime problems, but I do know that turning our education system around will have a very positive impact on our city, and it will help in the longer term help address crime. We have known this for a long time. 150 years ago, Frederick Douglass said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." This truth has not changed. Here are the principles that I believe should guide the Board of Education. Achievement. Student achievement must be our unrelenting goal. Specifically, I propose that we focus resources on third graders across the city and do whatever it takes to ensure the vast majority of them complete third grade as competent readers. I'm not an educator, so I do not have the expertise to design this plan, but as a board member, I will demand that our CEO, his central office staff, and all of the educators serving the hundreds of schools across the city design and execute a program that will have literacy as a minimum expectation and achievement for all of our students across the city. Parental and community involvement is also important for a successful school system. No matter how well trained and intentioned the professionals in our school system are, no one knows a child better than the parents. We must respect and value the choices the parents wish to make for their students. These include selective enrollment, magnet, and other public school choices beyond the neighborhood school. Transparency in budgeting, I believe, is absolutely essential as well. If we're to make great efforts for a massive system-wide improvement in student achievement and outcomes, it will be necessary to adopt full budget transparency. The delays we've experienced this year in revealing where the money is going only build distrust and cynicism. With total per student spending approaching $30,000 per year, Chicago's taxpayers, parents, and residents are entitled to know where the money is going. I've been working with some of CPS's best educators for the last 10 years. In my role at the Education Equity Fund, we have helped over 150 CPS educators afford excellent graduate school training that advances their careers and makes them more effective educators. I never cease to be amazed and impressed by the passion and commitment to Chicago's children that our educators bring to work every day. As a board member of CPS, I will advocate for clear educational objectives, starting with universal third grade reading. I will work to provide the resources necessary to achieve this and seek to cut out unproductive box ticking and administrative overkill. It's time for us to act. Achievement, choice, and transparency are the essential components for change. If we clearly define our mission for educators and provide them with the necessary resources and eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy, provide transparency in budgeting, and harness the dynamic support of empowered parents, I too believe we can make CPS the very best big city school system in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Next, we're moving on to District 5 with Anthony Hargrove.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. My name is Anthony Hargrove. I am a proud born and raised West Sider. I am a proud father of 4, 3 that attend, 2 in grammar school, 1 in high school, 1 graduate of CPS. She currently is a senior at Jackson State University. My wife is a educator on the West Side. I've been on the West Side all of my life, born and raised. I've worked with CPS for over 20 years. I served as dean. I have served as the operations manager for CPS, also the district's compliance specialist. I currently serve as the executive director for Breakthrough Beyond. I'm happy to be here. In lieu of time, I just want to respect and give everybody the opportunity to introduce their self, and I'll be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And now we'll move to Aaron Jitu Brown.
Thank you, Erica, and good evening, everybody. And also thank you to the speakers in the beginning who grounded us and provided an excellent tone for why this moment is so important. Again, my name is Jitu Brown. I am a proud alumni of Chicago Public Schools. I have a son who is a high school student in Chicago Public Schools, and a much better half, my wife, who is also a product of a proud graduate of Chicago Public Schools. I think that I'm running for District 5 school board because I've invested in the right of us having an elected school board, as my brother Rod mentioned earlier. For nearly 20 years, I've been on the front lines of that fight. So I've invested in this right. I've been arrested for this right. And now that Chicago has made a commitment to become a sustainable community school district, we have to protect that right. For the last 30 years, inequity has been ignored in Chicago Public Schools. I'm the national director of a group called the Journey for Justice Alliance. We're a national organization of community-based groups in nearly 40 cities around the country, and we use community organizing to win education justice. I'm also the board president of the mighty Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, an organization I've been connected to since 1991. And I will say this, We did a study in 2018 called Failing Brown versus Board. You can find it, you can Google it and it'll pop right up. And we compared something as simple as course offerings between schools that serve primarily white students and schools that serve Black and brown students. And that inequity was obscene. What some babies had access to and what other children didn't, on purpose, has set the tone for a lot of our young people losing hope, a lot of our young people not believing that they can accomplish anything. And I think that ignoring that inequity is why we have fought so long for an elected representative school board. And Chicago was a part of that study. I will say that my experience as the first community school coordinator of a high school in Chicago, organizing and being the coordinator of youth leadership development programs in schools throughout the West Side and the South Side, including John M. Smith, Douglas, Nash, have helped me see how it's possible for community to aid in the education process. And it helped form my belief, which is this: schools are community institutions. And it takes community wisdom with academic expertise to lead to school improvement. But what's needed on this board, what's needed for this board, is to have the courage to take disinvestment in Black communities off the table. For too long, folks have made decisions to starve neighborhood schools and then say we will have school choice. Well, if you throw a grenade in my neighborhood school, I don't have a choice. And what we want is the right for every parent, every child in Chicago public schools to have a world-class pre-K through 12th grade system within safe walking distance of your home. And that commitment should be given to, or that should be a commitment given to every taxpayer, whether you are a renter or a homeowner. So it's going to be important for this board not to only be able to make policy decisions, but I serve on several different boards: Equal Education in South Africa, Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, Midwest Academy, and then also Step Up Louisiana. A board member's job, of course, is to be able to set policy, to fundraise, but also to advocate. And so I think that we have to advocate for full funding at the federal level. From the state of Illinois, we have to advocate for the state of Illinois to have a funding system that is equitable and move away from property taxes. And then we have to have a commitment to make sure that our young people have sustainable community schools where we have a student-centered school climate. We have culturally relevant curriculum, where teachers have the supports that they need, where children have wraparound supports, ample wraparound supports to be able to remove obstacles to education. And make our schools like Finland, where Finland says the school must be ready for the child as opposed to the child being ready for the school. This school board must be a school board of courage, because for the last 30 to 40 years, the budget of Chicago public schools has been used as a pig's trough by those who have systematically disinvested in the education of young people based on how they look and where they live. Inequity has been palatable. The starving of neighborhood schools has been digestible. And I say not on my watch. The one thing that I have been a part of, and I've been consistent in being a source of clarity, a source of strength in organizing parents, young people to demand equity from Chicago public schools. And I will do that with honor as a school board member in the 5th District. I'm excited about this opportunity. To my opponents, I wish you the best, because again, the fact that we even have the right to be in this moment is a testimony that organizing works, that community organizing works. There were people who told us that we never had this opportunity. There are people that laughed at us in 2006 when we called for an elected school board. And now they're bending to the will of many of you on this call and many of us around the city who have stood back to back to make sure that we can create a Chicago public schools that serves all children. With that, I'll cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitu. Next, we have, really excuse me if I pronounce this wrong.
I got you.
Go ahead.
Jousef Shkoukani.
No, there's one more District 5 person.
Kernetha Jones. Jump on there.
You're good. Sorry, excuse me?
Is it Kernetha?
No, it's
Miquel.
Blaise. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Raise Your Hand for hosting this forum. You guys have been on top in the front of all the important issues for so long, and you're killing the game. You got the police out of schools, just even the elected school board, as Brother Jitu mentioned, is all from your hard work and dedication. So thank you so much for all your hard work and your commitment to the issues that are important to you. So my name is Miquel Blaise. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I grew up here. Sorry, I'm nervous. This is my first forum. So I'm a political consultant. I have been working behind the scenes on campaigns for over 15 years. I supported many progressive candidates, trying to get better judges on the bench, trying to get better folks elected in office. So one of my main issues was criminal justice reform. I worked with a group of folks that I led called the Judicial Accountability PAC. We were able to knock a corrupt judge off the bench, and we shook that tree and developed sustainable criminal justice reform. The Democratic Party no longer just co-signs all of the judges. Now they have to go through an actual questionnaire and be determined as to whether they should move on. Additionally, I am on the board of the West Side Center for Justice. I am on the board of the Northwest Side Home Equity Assurance Program, which is a program that helps people stay in their houses. I have a history in politics. I worked for one of the best and most revolutionary aldermen ever, Alderman Helen Schiller in Uptown. I am currently the chief of staff for a Cook County commissioner in the western suburbs. So I've worked on campaigns all across the city. I've seen the tale of more than 2 cities. Each neighborhood brings its own issues, problems, triumphs, gems. And so we have so much to build on. This is such a great opportunity, having an educator in the mayor's office and having this opportunity to have these discussions, and for the people here to really take time to figure out who they want to back on the school board. Additionally, we have opportunity to have real transparency. With having district and neighborhood representatives, we can bring issues back. Typically, we would get school board information after the fact. This is what they decided to do. And now we can open those lines of communication and make sure that we're having those conversations. I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and I'm super excited to have this chance. And also, I'm really proud to be running in the 5th district. We have an abundance of wealth there in terms of the personalities, the issues that people are representing, and the conversations that will happen. I tell to all my candidates, there are no L's if you're running for office, because at least the issues that are important to you are getting in front of people. And so I'm so grateful to have an opportunity to be a part of this process. Thanks.
So with District 6, we have Jessica Biggs.
Thank you, Erica. And good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Biggs, and it's really such an honor to be here with you this evening as a candidate for our first elected school board in 30 years, and to be running in District 6. My journey to get to this moment has been a long one, and one that has been deeply immersed in schools. I'm the daughter of 2 public school teachers, and I began my own career in schools first as a youth worker with Alternatives Incorporated at Senn High School way back in 2004, and then continued my path as a high school and middle school special education teacher, where I specialized in literacy development in the Bay Area of California. It was really in this role in the classroom that I recognized the impact that a strong school leader could have on a whole school community. And I felt the tug to return back to my home in Chicago, and to continue to learn and to take on this role. So after spending a year in Boston Public Schools and earning a master's in school leadership at Harvard's Graduate School of Education, I became principal at Edmund Burke Elementary School, which is a CPS neighborhood school, in 2012. Burke had experienced decades of disinvestment, significant and regular turnover of leadership, and found itself on probation for nearly a decade prior to my tenure as principal. But as a school leader, I set out to put my beliefs into action and prioritized building a sense of trust, a sense of community, and a sense of belonging in the school. And over my tenure, and I say we because this was really the collective effort of staff, students, parents, and community, that enabled us to more than double the size of our student body. We incorporated a child parent center that supported the neighborhood's youngest learners. We tripled the size of our school staff. We intentionally engaged parents and community in the life of our school, and we ultimately moved our school off of probation in 2018. I'm incredibly proud of the work that we did there together. And today I remain committed to building community schools through my work as an organizer. I lead our health equity work with the Southwest Organizing Project, where over the past 5 years, I've led the development and implementation of what we call the Southwest System of Care, which is, it's really coalition building work that wraps healthcare, behavioral health, social service supports and resources around our neighborhood schools in a coherent system of support, where our district is unable to do that work in a meaningful way. So I'm running now in District 6 to ensure that all of my students and families, both at Burke, and also my daughter Claire, who's a rising 5th grader at Galileo Scholastic Academy in Little Italy, have access to every opportunity that their heart desires. As I've thought through a platform, I'm running to make sure that all of our students have access to high quality neighborhood schools, that we follow through on the promise of the equity framework in CPS and ensure that there is equitable programming across our district schools. I really took our student speakers' comments to heart, because I also think the ways that we're thinking about advancement for our staff and our educators through career ladder opportunities into some of our paraprofessional roles, leadership opportunities for staff that are formalized, and reducing barriers to certification are really important things for our new board to take seriously. We all know we're facing a budget crisis, and so as an advocate for our district in this role, I want to make sure that CPS becomes a part of the state's evidence-based funding formula, and that we're thinking about accountability through neighborhood and community collaboration in meaningful ways, so that there is meaningful dialogue between decision makers and parents, students, and community members, so that all of our decisions are informed by the needs of those who are most impacted. So again, thank you for a moment to meet you all and speak with you this evening.
Thank you too. Next from District 6, we have Anusha Thotakura.
Hi, my name is Anusha Thotakura. I'm a former middle school math teacher running for school board in District 6. I'm running because I believe all children in our city deserve access to an excellent public education. Access to education is why my parents were able to come to this country from India to build a future for me and my brother. And access to a public education that fit my needs from kindergarten through college is what makes my being here possible as a candidate for school board. And that's what I believe every child deserves. As a candidate for school board, these are some of my priorities. Number one, early childhood education. Investing in early childhood education is what will have the biggest impact for our students in our school system down the road. We need to invest in smaller class sizes for younger grade levels and prioritize having classroom aides so that each child can get the attention that they deserve. I taught middle school, and having 35 to 40 middle schools in a classroom is challenging, but having 35 to 40 4-year-olds in a classroom is unmanageable and does not result in quality educational opportunities. We also need to invest in early screening for special education services, which will pay huge dividends for our students down the line. As a former teacher, I know the difference that early intervention and supports can make in a student's classroom performance and in their self-confidence in general outside of the classroom. My second priority is safe schools. A safe school is a school where a child that needs healthcare can access it, including mental health care. We need sufficient social workers, counselors, and nurses in every school to keep our students safe so they can learn. And it's been mentioned before, the average age of our school buildings is over 80 years. We have outdated and unsafe infrastructure, from unsafe drinking water to paint on the walls, and all our students from Gold Coast to Englewood, where District 6 spans, deserve safe learning environments. And I saw a comment, I've spoken to many parents, and if on paper there's limitations on what a classroom size should be, there are unfortunately many parents in District 6 whose kids go to classrooms in even pre-K through second grade who have more than 35 students in a classroom. And that may trigger a resizing of classroom structure for the upcoming school year, but that doesn't change the education that their students are receiving right now. The third priority, and this is very personal to me, is after school and extracurricular programs. And this is personal to me as someone whose favorite part of the school day growing up was what came after, whether it was choir or tennis or debate. That was where I found my home at school and in my community. And that's why I volunteer at CPS right now as a coach for their pilot debate and Spanish program in Brighton Park. And I see firsthand the impact that funding for after-school programs has on our students in CPS, especially for new arrivals, how they engage, how after-school programs engage students in their school community, make them excited to show up to school, and very importantly for many families, how after-school programs give students a safe space to be after school if their parents are working and cannot afford childcare. So as a former teacher, I know firsthand the impact that policy decisions made at the board level have in the classroom. I know what happens when we cut classroom aides. I know what happens when we don't have social workers or psychologists, to the point in the comments, for students experiencing mental health crises. I know what happens when kids don't have a safe space to be after school. I'm running to bring the perspective of a classroom teacher to the board and make sure every student in our city has an access to a high quality public education.
Okay, hello? Yeah, I'm getting ready to log.
Thank you, Anusha. Next we have Brenda Delgado.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Delgado. I'm a CPS parent of 3 children. One of them graduated and is now a junior in college. I've been fighting for an elected school board when that eldest child of mine, who's now 20 years old, was in 3rd grade. And all my children started at Ruben Salazar. It's a small school across the street from Walter Payton. And it was on the closure list of previous Mayor Rahm Emanuel back in 2011, 2012. I'm running for the board because when I went to go speak to my very first board meeting, I was on the LSC. I prepared my 2-minute remark and went to the board and found out that they had sent an intern and 2 staffers. While I was pleading my case to save my kids' school, they were doodling on their pieces of paper. So while I was screaming in my frustration, they were not listening to what parents were needing for their own children. So since that day, which was over 10 years ago, I've been fighting to make sure that parents' voices are heard. I was one of the founding members of Illinois Raise Your Hand. I've had my children in public schools since pre-K, and now they've selected their high school choices. What's interesting is they were, during elementary school, going to the most well-resourced schools in Chicago, but it really had a high cost. I started living in Southside 25 years ago. I started in Park Manor. I live now in Washington Park. And my local neighborhood school, which is Farron Attucks, has been closed 3 times, either relocated or consolidated, and finally closed in 2012. So my children did not have an option of a well-resourced neighborhood school, and we had to travel 100 miles round trip to get to those types of schools. The reason why I'm running for the board is very similar to what we're hearing from many other candidates. We all believe, I think, that every child has a right to a well-resourced public education, but I specifically want to say that there's going to be hard decisions that need to be made, and the accountability that's required to make those decisions should also be led by the parents that have had to pay the repercussions and the prices of, for decades, not having the priority of the mayor and its appointed board on public education. I want to make sure that people like me from the South Side, who has had disinvestment in my schools for decades, can make those decisions honestly and make sure that we're prioritizing the needs of all the children here in Chicago. Really, it's going to be one of the challenges that's going to make our school system one of the best ones in our entire country. We should be stepping up to the plate and feeling comfortable to say, why are the reasons that there's inequity in the system, and challenge that. Not because of my own action, but because I sat on the board of Raise Your Hand previously. We had those unimaginable ideas that we dared say it was inequitable to steal money from public education to fund private projects like Lincoln Yards, that we dared say over a decade ago that we needed to have an elected school board, that we dared say that it's progressive revenue that's going to make this funding gap no longer exist and is a requirement. And to really say that every single child does require a well-resourced neighborhood education, not just because it's my own kids, but every single one in District 6, from 76th Street all the way to Armitage. There are homeless kids living in tents right now in Humboldt Park, and they have just the same right to a well-resourced public education as the District 6 that runs through Lincoln Park, Wicker Park, South Loop, down here to Bronzeville and Washington Park, and including my own kids. So I'm running for District 6. My name is Brenda Delgado. Thank you.
We have Lamont Williams.
Good afternoon. Oh, not afternoon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lamont Williams. So I'll just jump right into it. My background, I'm an attorney by trade. I currently serve as Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry's Chief of Staff. And in that role, I focus on policy and I focus on the government budget at Cook County. But beyond all that, I'm a CPS alum. I'm born and raised in Southside Chicago. I'm born and raised in the district I'm running in, which is the 9th District. But my background and my CPS academic journey has been the exception and not the rule. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. Went to Clifford Elementary in the Montessori program on 110th and Western from K through 5. I tested into the IB program, the pre-IB program at Ogden Elementary, before it was the international school, back when it was a tiny little cube. And I did the pre-IB program at Ogden from 6th to 8th grade. And from there, I went to Lincoln Park High School and completed the IB program and graduated with my high school diploma and my IB diploma before I went on to college. In the same household I grew up in, my little brother, Nathaniel, wasn't as fortunate with his academic journey as I was, you know, and to be quite honest, I was blessed and fortunate that my older siblings, through the CPS lottery back in the 90s, I was able to make it to Clifford Elementary School because our local our local school was Mahalia Jackson on 88th and Vincennes. Clisso Elementary was a better performing school. It had a Montessori program. Mahalia Jackson did not. But because I went to Ogden for the pre-IB program, my little brother was not allowed to follow me to Ogden, and I had no other siblings at Clisso, so he had to go to his local elementary school, which he started at Ryder Elementary over on 87th and Low, and Lower Emerald, sorry, and he wound up going to Carol Rosenwald and schools like that. And I use that as a juxtaposition from my journey through CPS, being blessed and fortunate to participate in the IB program and go to Lincoln Park and experience, arts in the school still and the drama department and all those different things versus what my little brother, who's only 7 years my junior, what he experienced in his journey. And so with that, I'm running for the local, I'm not local, I'm running for the Chicago Public School Board District 9, really because I want to make sure that we extend that educational opportunity that I was fortunate enough to have and go throughout the entire CPS district. I don't believe that where you live, what color your skin, your social economic status should be a determining factor on what your educational quality or the quality of your academic journey should look like. I heard several candidates say that they want this to be a world-class district, and I agree wholeheartedly. I know a lot of folks get into these spaces, a lot of folks get into these type of positions, and we all have our why. We all have our reasons why we're running. What I'm focused on and what I think will come through the more folks get to know me, and I appreciate Raise Your Hand and all of our wonderful speakers for hosting this forum, is I don't want to just hinge on the why, I want to hinge on the how. I've been looking at over the last couple fiscal year budgets for CPS over the last month or so. I'm waiting for them to release the fiscal year budget for 2025 because whoever comprises this board that's what we will face. And our budget reflects our priorities. We can't go in there with just ideals and aspirations, but we need folks on this board who have plans, who have dug into the numbers and realize one of the most important issues before we get to any of these other issues that we want to address and solve, we have to reduce the $391 million budget deficit that our students, our teachers, our CPS community folks will inevitably have to deal with when they go back to school in August of this year. And with that, I'll wrap up and just say, our students deserve better. That's why I'm running. And you can see more of my information and background on my website, LamontRaymondWilliams.com. Thank you.
So we'll move on to District 10 with Adam Parrott-Sheffer.
Yes, thanks for having me this evening. So my dad was a pastor, so I've got a strong memory of my mom sitting in that front row about 12 minutes into a sermon, and the look she gave him when he went long, it shut him up. So I will be as quick and brief as possible today. I imagine also that brevity will be an asset on this 21-person board. So I'm running in District 10. First and foremost, I'm a parent. I've got 2 boys at their neighborhood schools, one at the elementary school, one at the high school. And I'm a former educator. I was a teacher. I taught middle school. I taught special education, beginning with kindergartners through 5th grade. And I was a former Chicago public school principal. These days, I'm an educator who teaches principals and superintendents how we improve systems of schools. And it's bringing that sort of knowledge, those experiences from across the country, across the world, to help make sure that we are doing right by each and every kid is why I am here. I really think it's important that we have folks that have skin in the game, people whose kids will experience the ramifications of our decisions. And I am a parent in that position. I think it's important that we have folks who know the work and have done the work successfully. I'm an educator who has led teams that have increased the number of kids who read on grade level, who do math on grade level by over 20% in 2 years. I know that it's important that we know the core business of our organization on the board. I've also done that work at scale. I've been responsible for policies that impacted 250,000 students with disabilities, ensuring that they had greater access to pre-K services, ensuring that when they weren't receiving their services, that they had the right to see a lawyer speedily and get compensatory services. And I've ensured that over 12,000 students with disabilities had access to their services when receiving their GED. I know what it means to do this work at scale. I know how hard it is, and I know how to do it with humility, because it's really hard to get stuff from the board level to the school in the way that's intended, in a way that's really going to serve all kids well. And so where do I hope to go with that, right? Like, I think if we can talk about our past a lot, but what matters most is where are we going as a city? And I think what's most important to me is that we have joy-filled schools. And what that means is that each kid is respected and celebrated for who they are. It means that they experience feeling significant every day, that they belong, and that they have fun. We need classrooms that are full of powerful learning. That means opportunities to master content that's connected to their identities and that leverages their creativity. And then finally, we need it to be not where some kids thrive, but where each kid thrives, and where it doesn't matter where your zip code is in this city. And what that means is that they have experiences with play, that they have joyful recess, they have joyful classrooms, that they get the arts, that they get athletics every day. And they do it in safe buildings that are designed for the 22nd century. That's what I'm hoping to bring, making sure that we have good conversations, that we get to the root of what really matters, which is kids and learning in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chair Rhymefest Smith.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Che Rhymefest Smith. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I am running for board in the 10th district. I went to Bryn Mawr, which is now named Boucher, which is the former alma mater of Michelle Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama. I also went to South Shore, so I went to both of my neighborhood schools. One of the things that I felt, at Bryn Mawr, Boucher, I had a wonderful experience in elementary school. When I got to high school, I felt like I was warehoused. I didn't do well in high school. And even though I didn't do well in high school, some friends of mine from CPS, we got together and start doing what we were really interested in. We didn't have this in South Shore in 1992. We started doing music. We started writing music together. We ended up winning Grammys and Academy Awards and going around the world. And one of the things that my grandfather taught me is, for all of the consuming that we do, what is your contribution? He would always ask me, whenever I'm hungry, Dad, when we gonna get something to eat? Hey, son, for all the consuming you want to do, what have you contributed? And so what I did with that artistic success was become a leader in youth empowerment and youth artistry. And I never left the South Side of Chicago. I still live in the house that my grandparents have owned for over 80 years in Chatham. And I've been giving back in terms of teaching impact writing classes, narrative classes, teaching young people how to manage their emotions through writing their authentic stories. And one of the things that I've been learning, I've been doing this for over 20 years now. And one of the biggest things that I've been learning is in our Art of Culture and Donda's House courses, where I would teach impact writing, it would be the first time young people would be excited about critical thinking, excited about literature and reading. And, oh, who is James Baldwin? The fire next time. God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, fire next time. And then you see young people start to, well, who is James Baldwin? And you realize the job that invested schools are not doing. I believe it was Natasha, and I'm so glad she spoke about this earlier. Natasha Dunn spoke about 90% or 10% of our young people being able to read and do math. It's because education is not inspiring for some of our young people like it is for others. Mathematics is not inspiring for some of our young people like it is for others. I believe from the work work that I have been doing in the community with young people to re-engage them and re-excite them about learning, that on this school board, we need people who are people. Yes, I have a fellowship, a Dartmouth fellowship, Montgomery fellowship. I've done a Pritzker Axelrod fellowship. I have a honorary humanitarian degree of humane letters from Chicago State University. But even beyond all of that, we've had very educated people on the school board up until now, and it's been a shadow government. Even with very educated people on the school board, Barbara Byrd Bennett was able to steal $23 million and get 7 other people to vote with her to steal that money. So what we need is people who care, and I'm going to go back to Rod with this. We need people who care about the values of the community. We need people who come from the community, that know the community, that have made successes of ourselves and are willing to contribute what we have been given. And so that's what I would like to be on the school board, a visionary, a source of inspiration, someone who comes and excite not only the seriousness, because of course our platform is budget, curriculum, personnel. We have to make sure that we meet our fiduciary duties. However, we have to bring parents together. All LSCs are not fully staffed. We have transparency, and we have to have love. So with that, I am Che Rhymefest Smith, running for school board in District 10.
Thank you. Next up, we have Karin, Norington-Reaves.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Raise Your Hand for sponsoring this evening. And more importantly, I want to really give a shout out to Natasha and Catlyn for really setting the tone for this evening. I come to this race in District 10 as a parent, as an alum, as a former teacher, as a former practicing attorney and a nonprofit leader here within the city of Chicago. I have to share with you my experience as the parent of a special needs child. My daughter was born without eyes, not without a brain, but without eyes. And when I brought her to Chicago Public Schools in the hopes of being able to go to our neighborhood school, there was no neighborhood school for her to attend. There was no opportunity for an inclusive education. And what I know every single child in our district deserves is a neighborhood school that is fully resourced, that is safe, and that will provide them with high quality education. It's the same thing that every parent deserves as a taxpayer. And so for me, I had to make some decisions. I had to talk with CPS. I had to walk through this Byzantine IEP process. And I kept thinking that here I am, a highly educated attorney. At the time, I was leading workforce development for the city of Chicago and Cook County. I'm a former attorney who practiced health law, mental health law for adolescents and was an advocate for mentally ill adolescents. And the process was Byzantine for me. And all I could think was, if it is this hard for me to go through this process, what is it like for the average parent in this district? I wanted to send my child to a level 1 school. Guess what? Where there are cluster programs, there are not level 1 schools. She could not go to a level 1 inclusive classroom. I contacted a principal and the principal said, well, we've never had a blind child. Wrong answer, sir. And so I think about what we had to go through. And I think about the fact that parents every day are fighting this fight. Now, my daughter now is in an inclusive classroom, but she has to get up at 5:30 in the morning in order to get on a bus and drive halfway across the city. She gets a high quality education from really caring teachers and CPS. And for that, I am absolutely eternally grateful. But I know that the disparities are great in that building and throughout our district. And I know that we can do better. As a workforce development professional, there is a number that galls me that I want to share with you. 40% of our kids 1 year post-graduation are neither working nor in school. We can do something about that number. And the way we influence that number is making sure that we have quality pre-K through 2nd and 3rd grade so that by the end of third grade, our kids are actually on grade level and reading with solid literacy and numeracy rates, so that when they get to graduation, they actually have a path forward with strong literacy. But the other way they get to that path forward is by having strong career readiness, career exposure, career exploration from 6th through 12th grades. There are other districts within, yes, I did say 40%, Joy Bunton. There are districts within the state of Illinois that have career plans for their kids beginning in 7th grade through 12th grade. Why don't we have that in the city of Chicago? Because we lack the political will and because we lack leadership that is willing to make that investment. And so I'm asking for your support to serve as the representative for District 10 for Chicago's first elected school board. And I look forward to answering any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Robert C. Jones Jr. up next.
Hello, everyone. I just want to first of all raise your hand for this forum and the opportunity to share with you on today. I am Robert Jones. I'm the pastor of the Mount Carmel Missionary Baptist Church. I've been pastor for the past 15 years here in Bronzeville. I've been an active citizen of the Bronzeville community for over 13 years. And my commitment to education has led me to serve on the local school council at Dunbar High School. I've also spoke against and took arrest against the racist CPS school closures of the Rahm administration. And I put my body on the line to save Diet High School. I was one of those that was a 34-day hunger striker until the city of Chicago Public Schools reopened Diet High School. And that was an action that was historic. On the front line for justice, I worked to bring about the first elected public school board in the city of Chicago, which is why we are here today. And I'm active with sustainable public school models, working closely with Drake School. And I have stood and spoke and taken a risk with many organizations to support everything from rent control to affordable housing to preventing evictions during the pandemic, as well as working with the unions, whether it's SEIU 73 or SEIU Illinois and Indiana for the airport workers at O'Hare or the Fight for 15, as well as working toward better working conditions and protective equipment and pay for the nurses and workers during the pandemic, just to get to know me. And all of that lets you know that I understand. I've been on the ground. I've been a part of the voice that needs a public school board here in Chicago. And I've been on the ground with that. I've not observed it from afar. I've been right there, and I'm not a part of the voice. I am that voice, and I look forward to being representative of that voice to be on the school board. Things that I would look forward to sharing is making sustainable community schools more than just a model, but making it a standard for our schools in the city of Chicago. But not only that, to bring about educational and economic equity to all of the schools in CPS, as well as making sure that there are safe places and safe spaces for not only our students, our teachers, and our workers. And I look forward to any questions that you may have for me as I am a candidate for the 10th District of Chicago Public Schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well. Next, we'll move on to District 5 again with Kernetha Jones. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. I'm just like to introduce myself. My name is Minister Jones, and I got an education through the Chicago Public School System. I have a master's in special education. I have taught in several schools, private, public, Riverdale out there, Christian schools. And I've noticed that so many Black people now think they're the biggest population, removing their children out of the school system and homeschooling. And if we want to, the answer is very simple. If we really want to have our school to be prosperous and advance our students, all we really have to do is give them a quality education. I love the way people spoke. The young lady who came on first from the Black Community Collaborative, organization, she spoke and said the key word is the root. We must be honest with ourselves and go to the root of the problem. They removed phonics out of the school system. They, I guess, the 2%, maybe United Nations, I'm not sure who did it. But they removed phonics, and everyone knows that's the foundation of reading. They removed 14,000 Black teachers, and we know that they terminated them. And they knew that we needed those teachers who looked like those students to encourage them and to inspire them. But they were removed. It was a plan. And then they also removed careers. They removed cursive. Even when I was getting petitions, over 2,000, some of the people couldn't write in cursive. How are you going to ask them to do something and you remove the curriculum? So I'm just saying that we're going to have to be honest with ourselves. And when we unite together, and I love what the people are saying here, and I'm a minister also, we're going to have to come together and guarantee our children, go and find the best school system that you can find. And we want to model our school system like that one. Cursive, phonics, the quality teachers that look like the students who are in the school system. Also, it's very important. As I was out there in the school system, I found out our kids can't read like one of the people said. Not that they can't read, but they have been miseducated, de-educated. They can't read because the education the quality is so low. But yet we have allowed people to come in and to transgender our children. Now, I'm saying this because I was sharing literature with all of my constituents in my district, with literature showing them the sexually explicit pornography that they're teaching the children as early as even preschool. And they are giving this to our children, grooming and prepping them. We're not sending them to school for that. We're sending them to school to get a quality education. And over 99% of my parents in the community were outraged. They didn't even know it has slithered in the school system. And it was happening to the children where parental rights have been taken away. So I'm just saying, I'm coming back here to guarantee our children are not porned out with this comprehensive sex act, which is nothing but children's pornography. It must.
She's muted herself.
I think the last I unmuted myself. Okay, I didn't mute myself. But I'm just saying that when I went to the community, the people are completely against the children being groomed and not educated, being taught sexually explicit information. And I am coming to help the children because I too am a minister, and I must be a mouthpiece for the children who can't speak for themselves and say that we're going to give them a quality education. We're going to let them go out for recess. I've been to other schools in suburban areas. They have 3 recess periods for their children. Some of our children don't have any, even in the charter schools. I mean, not one at all, none. They keep them in the class. Even prisoners get a break, and our children are not. So I'm going to be fighting and standing with you all to guarantee that our children, number one, they're not going to groom them. They don't need to be prepped for a sex lifestyle. That's not what we want as parents. If they want a lifestyle like that, they'll get that after they graduate from high school when they're grown. We're not going to groom and prep them in preschool and elementary school. We're not going to do that. We're not going to let people have sexual, do all kind of surgery on our children without the parents' permission. We're not going to strip the parental rights. So that's number one. And then we're going to guarantee a quality education, hire teachers that look like the student. If it's a Black community, we want Black teachers back in there that were terminated. And we want the foundation, phonics, cursive. We want the foundation that every other quality institution has. And with that, I'll say
we have to can you please end your remarks and we'll let the next person speak. All right, thank you. So the next person is Jousef Shkoukani.
Yeah, that was actually really good. When I graduated, my parents didn't even know I was walking the stage because it was butchered so bad, my last name. So that was really good. Hello, everybody. My name is Jousef Shkoukani. It's spelled with a J, Jousef with a J. It's the trademark name. My dad is Middle Eastern, immigrated here when he was 18. My mom is Italian and Greek, but she's like third generation. So, she uses Prego for like the Italian sauce. So that's how you know she's third generation. Anthony Hargrove, thank you so much for telling me about today's meeting. I checked my spam folders. I don't know if I got an email, but I only received 67 extra signatures beyond the 1,000 minimum. So, because I'm being challenged, it's likely I may get kicked off the ballot. But either way, I'll come back again in 2026. I'm passionate about education. I started an education nonprofit in 2020. It's called Unified Under Hope. We provide supplemental tutoring and mentoring to students in lower socioeconomic areas. Our work has been predominantly done in Michigan. I'm from Michigan originally. Don't hold it against me. I found my wife here in Illinois, in Chicago. She's a Chicagoan, born and raised in Hyde Park. And so we're building our roots here in West Loop. We don't have children yet, but we're hopeful that God will bless us with children soon. We are trying to take, or at least we're trying to take a proactive approach towards education with the work we're doing here and balancing the work that we do with Unified Under Hope, as well as my background. When I was in law school, I worked as an attorney here in the city. When I was in law school, I read the book, The Color of Law, and it talks about all the different ways that laws had made it so that there's all these racial inequities across states and from housing to education. And so I then wrote my law review article about education inequality in America. And I talked about how it's not a constitutional right and how overcoming some of these things that have been mentioned on this call, like literacy, has some schools graduating with students who can't even read or write. I was held back. So I know all too well about not succeeding, on the first try. And so really those are the students I want to help. But recently, just a few hours ago, the 2025 budget came out. And so I didn't want to, that's a little bit about myself, my background, attorney, nonprofit work in education. Oh, last year I received Forbes 30 Under 30 for the education nonprofit and the work that we're doing. And so that was a really exciting honor here in Chicago. The 2025 budget proposes, and it talks about the $500 million deficit. I think one thing that's unique about me is that I don't have an education background formally. I've never been a teacher, but I have been a purchaser for Continental Automotive for a year. I've been a financial analyst for Borg Warner, another automotive supplier. And I've also worked as an assurance intern doing accounting. My background's in accounting. And so the budget's really important to me because the budget talks about, it really shows and highlights the different ways, inequities lie, like some, inequities, rise. Somebody was mentioning on here special education. I recently was elected onto the local school council for Wilma Rudolph Learning Center here in Chicago. And that focuses on special education. And so in the recent budget, it talks about special education reductions of $3 million. And so, that really frightens me. And that's something that I'd want to, push back on. It talks about reductions of bus monitors and reduction in the safe passage spending, and also for our lifeguard or, folks who help students get across the street. And so it's really important that we are not taking away money from areas that are incredibly important for certain minority groups in Chicago, as well as our student safety. Those should be number one. And so what I want to focus on is the way our budget works, the way our spending works. I don't think charter schools are the problem. And I just want to say that as well. I think charter schools are the crutch right now. I love that the current funding method has changed to make it more equitable. I love that we're spending based on school need and not based on student head, because when it's on student head and you have South Side schools where parents are choosing to send their kids to a charter school instead of the neighborhood school because if it's underperformance, I think that makes sense. And we should have that right to the parents. It makes sense that the parents, and I would want that same, privilege if I was a parent and I didn't, prefer my neighborhood school. But as time and things take time, my dad always says, don't rush. When I told him I was running for school board, I'm 29, but I'm passionate about this. So, that's why I'm running, but he's like, things take time. And I think it takes time for the way that the spending model is going to, go about. We just started it. And I think it makes sense for it to build up our neighborhood schools, to build back that trust with neighborhood parents, to trust in those schools. I think that takes time. And in the meantime, if they choose charter schools over them, so be it. But I think things will, essentially balance out like any market, and maybe parents will start choosing neighborhood schools as we show them that money's being reinvested in there. And so I don't want to take up too much of time. I can belabor the points. I can really get into the nitty gritty with the budget. Jousef Shkoukani, Jousef with a J. I hope I'm on this ballot. If not, you'll see me in 2026. I'll keep reading, I'll keep learning, I'll keep doing the local school council. And raise your hand for Illinois Public Schools. I'm sorry we haven't had the opportunity to really connect before this. I really would like to get to know the folks at your organization more. And if there's anything that I can do, whether public service wise or whatnot, whether I'm on the school board or not, I'd love to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Next, we'll go back to Danielle Wallace from District 6.
Good evening, everybody. I know this has been a arduous, long evening of listening to folks talk, so I will not belabor any point. I am so happy to be here. Thank you. Raise your hand. I missed your email, Ms. Natasha, so thank you so much for just circling back and reminding me, hey, did you get my email? And I just want to make some space for humanity because Catlyn's testimony, if you will, took my breath away. I lost a child, so hearing about losing a friend is not just an everyday occurrence to me. It is a real traumatic experience that too many of our kids have personal testimonies about. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you guys for having me. So really quick, my name is Danielle Wallace. I am a mom I had two sets of twins when I was 17 years old in 1 year, one in April and one in November. And so I had to get acclimated really quickly with Chicago Public Schools in a different way. Even being a Chicago Public School student at Simeon, I had to then become a Chicago Public School parent. And so my unique experience with Chicago Public Schools is one that I bring with me to this board table. And the thing that I will say about being such a young parent and trying to raise 4 children is that there would be no Miss Danielle, as all my kids call me. There would be no Danielle Wallace running for the 6th district of Chicago Public School Board without my village. And that's why, I advocate for the village as the solution. We are the makers of the babies. We are the caretakers of the babies. And in any avenue you put them in, they are still our babies. And so I'm always advocating for using all of the resources that we already have to take care of our babies. And Chicago Public Schools is no exception. And one example of that is very it's striking to me because it was my first experience in Chicago Public Schools as a clerk. And I also had the arduous responsibility of being the STLS coordinator, which afforded me the opportunity to see some things in our young families being in schools. And it was in my neighborhood at Stagg. I'm from Inglewood. And so being the coordinator, I had to bring in community organizations. I had to bring in folks that I knew in that neighborhood to help us bring in the things that our families needed. And that was just me coordinating, as one person. And what if we took that model and made it permanent for all of our schools? This is very simple in my mind. It is just one way. And one of the things that I definitely want to say is that I really appreciate all of the different stories that I heard on this call tonight. And I appreciate that I haven't heard one robot. I appreciate that we are real people who really want to do this work, and we are all doing it differently. And I appreciate the fact that I can run as a write-in because I've been objected, but I ain't going nowhere. So I appreciate that you'll remember my name, Danielle Wallace, 6th District.
Thank you, Danielle. And last but not least, we have Dr. Rosita Chatonda from District 10.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Rosita Chatanda, and I've been in the system for a while, a long while. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm running. I started off as a parent. I'm a product of a private school system. I went to public school for 1 year. I'm a proud graduate of Sin High School. I grew up on the north side. And I came into education. I moved to the south side as a teenager, almost a full adult. And I had my children in private and public school. And that is when I began the education of what the inequity is in education. I began to organize as a parent with 3 Black sons and a daughter. I can tell you the experiences I had were quite unique. I began to organize as a parent. And then after I organized as a parent, stress and issues primarily having to do with Black boys and how my boys were muted and really didn't have a voice in Chicago public schools. I became a teacher for that reason. And I was selected, I graduated from Teachers for Chicago. And I worked as a parent of 4 children. I received my master's. Well, I had a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in psychology from Roosevelt. And then I received my master's in curriculum and instruction, where I worked at CPS for about 20 some odd years. I also have been working on this piece for about that time, elected school board, because I organized Karen Lewis's campaign in 2009. I worked as her Southside regional organizer doing that, trying to get justice for Black children, Black schools, Black teachers, and address the inequity that exists. I want to move forward and talk because we only have 3 minutes. I'm going to tell you some of the things I've done. When I was in the classroom, I noticed that my students who grew up in public housing were having difficulty managing the language. And so I began to, through trial and error, try to introduce them to skills-based education and give them a foundation so that they would be able to achieve on standardized tests. And every year after that, I received the highest gain in my classroom in reading, even though I was the math science person. And I started to see that I could do this in schools, some years getting as much as 3 and 4 years growth. That is when I decided to take a whole school and try it. So in 2007, I took Madison School as a lead administrator, math science coach, and we got our school off probation in 1 year using the strategy. So, of course, I wanted to see if all these things would work on a larger scale. Also, I decided that, okay, well, this works. Now I'm going to do legislation. I'm going to reach out to the legislators. And when I went back to school to do my doctorate, it was on the literacy gap. Explaining to people why children who are descendants of slavery are not achieving at 85%. Their reasons. In the late 90s, the entire literacy piece was pulled from under our students. Spelling, phonics, penmanship, because Mary Daly said this was going to be a business. And the children would not need to learn how to spell and do grammar, because guess what? The computer would do. So now we have, fast forward 20 years later, 4 children didn't have computers. So that is why we have the literacy gap. And it's profoundly affecting children who are descendants of slavery. I came to this forum to work. I'm going to be working in this field no matter what happened. This is my life. So I'm on this elected school board. You're going to be seeing me. I'm moving legislation on behalf of my community. We must fix what we've broken. And our children, especially children who look like me, they have been the most underserved in our entire system. We had 14,000 Black teachers terminated over a period. The Chicago Teachers Union in the late 90s was 40,000 members strong. And guess what? Almost half of those were African-American teachers, almost 18 to 19,000. Now we're down to 4. Those daily violence interrupters that are in the classroom every day, giving our students support and the things that they need, they're gone. This is why the South and West Side, one reason it's up in flames, because we need them. We need that kind of advocacy in the room. So in the classroom, I'm looking at the time. So, but I do want to say this. I've written legislation. I've given it to address this inequity. That is why I'm going to the board on behalf of my community, on behalf of my beautiful sons and my daughters and all. I've taught over 1,000 children in this community. Every time I go to the store, I see one. We cannot afford to leave our children behind. With every breath that I have, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be pushing, and I want to be on that school board because I want to push inside. I will push on the outside until I cannot push anymore. Our children deserve it, our people deserve it, and it's time for our repair. Thank you very much.
And that concludes all of our candidate intros. Thank you to everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Erica, for leading us through this discussion. Thank you, everyone, again, for your time and being here tonight. What I want to transition us to is to wrap up and close. I know that a lot of our neighbors, parents, LSC members, community members at large provided questions for tonight. So in lieu of our technical difficulties, we are at a time where I believe we should transition to close. So here's what we're going to do. For the questions that we had planned for tonight, we will actually move those forward. We are planning an upcoming another virtual session with candidates. And so we'll bring some of those questions to that space. And there's actually a few of you that also landed some really good questions that, really cross, no matter the district or, really land some strong points around, this plight for a seat on the Chicago elected school board. Some of those questions are actually going to show up in a candidate questionnaire. So, hold on to those questions. There's also going to be a link that is going to be dropped in the chat. That is, it's a bit.ly link. It's bit.ly, raise your, or RYH, meet the candidate questions is a link that you can go to and can continue to share with us those questions. We'll share those with the candidates at our next virtual event, and then also in a candidate questionnaire. So you will see the responses to those. By way of wrapping us up, there is a program evaluation in the chat. Please feel free to grab that link. We, aim to for perfection, but we also aim to respond to your feedback and your suggestions. So if you have them, please use that link in the chat and provide us your feedback. And then there's a final point, which I think I'm really excited to let you all know, is that on August 1st, from 6 to 8 p.m., please save the date, mark your calendars. We are going to hold our next virtual candidate event. This is one that's going to dig deeper into the issue. So today was an opportunity to hear from the candidates as they introduce themselves. So what we're deeming our next opportunity is going to be challenges and opportunities, a community discussion with Chicago school board candidates. And again, that link is in the chat. If you're joining us live on YouTube, we will make sure that this is posted across all of Raise Your Hand social media. If you're connected with us, you'll see this link. It is in the chat here on Zoom. Please feel free to grab that, register. Candidates would love to continue to engage with you. If you have any further questions, please, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at info@ilraiseyourhand.org. Connect with us through our social media, stay engaged. One final point as we continue or, prepare to close is to stay engaged with this process. If you are a parent, other parents who aren't here that would be interested in these conversations, invite them to our next virtual session. And then also for those who prefer in person, we're planning for you too. So our September session, which will be, as we understand the process, after candidates have successfully beat, I would say, the challenges for ballot positions, we know that will culminate in August. So in September, we're planning to have an in-person forum. So we will be sharing more to come on a save the date for that event at a location that will be centrally located, accessible, with the needs for all who attend. And that in-person session will continue to dig deeper, right? So this next virtual session will have issues that we'll go through around the challenges and opportunities. And then that in-person session is where we'll be transitioning to candidate debate in that forum as well. So looking forward to you all staying engaged with us. Appreciate you all, the candidates, for your time. This is a late evening. So without further ado, I just want to say again, thank you so much for joining us. We will be in touch. For all of you all who have not already done so, please feel free to drop your candidate information in the chat that has been running through the chat this evening. And for all of those who are participants and CPS parents, continue to stay engaged, and let's stay through to the next 118 days until Election Day for finally having elected representation for Chicago Public Schools. Thanks, everyone. Be well, take care of yourselves, and have a good evening.